Lieutenant Davis was in the middle of discouraging Dr. Campbell and intern Nick from trying to adopt one of the local specimens when he received a distress signal from X7 with an order for urgent return. He ran as fast as he could while carrying Olgris, and unknowingly Zia, who wrapped herself around him at some moment. Despite his best effort, they arrived late and could only watch as the shuttle was taking off. As they sat among equipment the shuttle left behind, Zia was trying to get her emotions under control so she could calm the others. As a Zex, she felt the distress of people around her and had to fight to not let it affect her. The fact that Nick and Lieutenant Davis were closest to her and were relatively calm compared to the rest of the crewmates helped a little bit. She flailed her tail trying to smooth out the feathers that were in disarray after all the running. Lieutenant Davis seemed to be completely collected. The initial shock was quickly turning into determination and drive to protect the crew. Nick, the sweet idiot that he is, was more afraid of Fi standing behind him than of the situation they were in. Zia knew that most humans were afraid of arachnid species, but the idea that Nick fears Fi more than being stranded on an unknown planet brought her amusement. With that thought, she started slithering towards Fi. When Zia was moving from one crewmate to another, Lieutenant Davis was going from footage of the drone they sent out after landing, looking for possible shelter. Finally Zia hissed towards him, prompting him to stand up. "I believe everyone understands the situation we are in. X7 jumped into FTL, so it will take a considerable amount of time before we are rescued." Zia hissed disapprovingly. Crap, he wasn't good at motivational speeches. For his usual subordinates, the fact that something was in order was enough to motivate them. He coughed and began speaking again. "Nonetheless, I believe we have good chances of survival." Before taking off, the shuttle's pilot was nice enough to empty his cargo, leaving us with as much equipment as possible. An opportunity we can't afford to waste. 12 kilometers from here, the scouting drone located a cave, which should provide us with some protection from local predators. If we start moving now we should reach it with time to spare before the sun sets. He took a deep breath and ordered, "Start packing cargo on the transport boards." After a moment of delay, everyone started looking for scattered boxes and loading them on the transport boards. Transport boards were standard equipment of every cruiser ship and shuttle, capable of carrying sizable weights while hovering smoothly over the ground at height adjusted to the user. It wasn't some fancy anti-gravitational device, it still pushed the ground to push itself up, but it got the job done. Thankfully, they managed to fit all the cargo on 6 transport boards that they had. Otherwise they would have to make a couple of trips back and forth or have Timnock carry it. Timnock was the last of the crewmates to arrive at the site. 3 meters high alien looking like what could be described as an unfortunate mix-up between a troll and a bear, was surprisingly slow but very strong. Probably strongest among the crew right now. Though, in her natural habitat, which was almost 3 times as rich in oxygen as here, Fi could probably outmatch the giant. After they arrived at the entrance to the cave, Lieutenant Davis told them to wait outside and held his hand towards Zia. Zia hissed disapprovingly. Only now Lieutenant Davis noticed that for the past few hours Zia only hissed while conveying simple messages telepathically. Sometimes Fi, on which Zia now was, answered for her. He pointed to the place where her translator should be attached. What happened? Zia's tail, which split into 3 at the tip, touched the finger he was pointing with. She forced an image of her translator falling, during the time she was wrapped around him, into his head. He sighed. "Sorry about that, but something lives in there, and you are the only one capable of performing a sapience examination right now." Zia hissed but slithered around his arm until her head was resting on his shoulder. What lived in the cave was not sapient. Shortly after the two went in, Lieutenant Davis yelled to Nick to come in and help him. They emerged dragging 3 paralyzed, horse-sized, feline-like creatures. The soldier turned towards the rest of the crew. "You might want to leave. Go rest inside." They were happy to oblige. Finally having a moment to breathe, the reality of the situation started getting up to them. First to break the silence was Olgris. "I have seen the briefing on this planet. We'll be seeing tornadoes, earthquakes, monsoon seasons, and hail the size of a human fist. We are doomed." Zoe, on whose lap Zia currently rested curled up, sighed. It was probably thanks to the Zex, but she didn't feel all defeated yet. "I've seen it too. We have supplies, solar batteries. We can prepare ourselves." Instead of calming him down, those words only fired up Olgris more. "Prepare ourselves. Where we are, there will be almost 50 degrees Celsius during the summer. Neither I nor Phi can stand that." Zoe, growing agitated despite Zia's presence, raised her voice as well. "We are going to find somewhere cooler. If not, we are going to build it. If we need something, we'll find it or make it. No one is going to die." Olgris shot back. "There is not one engineer here. When you will be wasting time pretending to be one, guess who will show up? Local predators, of which those cats were modest examples." Nick, who until now sat quietly against the wall, interjected. "Davis has some guns and a paralyzer. We also have some transport boards. We can figure something out." That definitely didn't calm the alien down. "You can't kill 3 meters predator with a fucking transport board. And again with the making. There are no engineers here. We got a soldier, 2 xenobiologists, geologist, microbiologist, botanic, and..." Olgris pointed to every member, while naming their field, except for the absent Lieutenant Davis. He suddenly hesitated when it came to Nick. He knew he was not an engineer, because they wouldn't be sent to the surface during routine cataloging. "Who the hell even are you?" A little embarrassed, Nick answered. "An intern." "What the hell is an intern?" Olgris asked, genuinely bewildered. Internships were a rather rare occurrence in the GA, and basically unheard of when it came to crews of explorational vessels. As most species relied on the heavy specialization of its specimens, there was no need for internships. Children quickly decided on their overall direction of education, and narrowed it down even further later. Thus, a person who finished their education was ready to serve on the ship freshly out of school. Before Nick could answer, he was called by Lieutenant Davis from outside the cave. At the entrance to the cave, Lieutenant Davis stood next to the feline body stacked up on a transport board. "There is a river nearby. I will leave the bodies in it to cool down. If nothing snatches them, they will be breakfast tomorrow." He handed Nick a stun gun. "It is set to paralyzing. If anything approaches, shoot it and call Zia to check for sapience. If it's not sapient, it's food." After the last sentence, he also handed him a knife. "I'm an intern, not a soldier," Nick protested. Lieutenant just smiled. "Congratulations, the military part of your internship starts today." He took a few steps before turning around and adding, "While you are on guard, think of some booby trap for predators to leave at night at the entrance. I will be back in an hour or 2. Lieutenant Davis entered the cave with Nick following him, being released from the guard duty. Moving forward, he heard chatting noises. The soldier sighed with relief. It was good to hear morale was better than when he left. Everyone was busying themselves with the cleaning, taking the useful equipment out of the crates and such. However, when he got close and crewmates noticed him coming, the atmosphere suddenly tensed and everyone stopped moving and fell silent. "What happened to the chute on site?" he asked while pointing to the 1-meter-high 4-legged reptile that Zoe tried to hide behind her back without much success. Its silhouette and posture very much resembled that of a dog, save for an elongated neck. But it followed us so far she started embracing the animal, supposedly trying to shield it from Lieutenant Davis. It indeed seemed to be the same animal he was dragging her from before an emergency. Then she hurriedly added, "And Zia says it's friendly. It thinks we're its parents." Lieutenant Davis turned to Zex, who was suspiciously tightly wrapped around Ulgris. "Seriously?" Zia hissed. "And everyone is okay with that?" he asked and looked around, stopping on the Zex and the Krorkux again. That new pet was almost as big as Ulgris, not to mention Zia. Zia immediately hissed approvingly. Ulgris, who spent the last 20 minutes watching Zoe try to teach the animal to bark, hoping that it would, quote, melt Davis, gave in and nodded. Lieutenant Davis sighed. "Whatever boosts morale." He turned to Nick. "You've made the trap." Apparently proud of himself, Nick confirmed. "Yep, I was waiting for you to come back before setting it up." He grabbed some bags and ran to the entrance to place the trap. Having some time before the setting sun and in better moods, everyone started chatting, trying to get to know each other. Working in different fields, they mostly knew each other only by sight and hardly ever spoke before. Zoe and Zia were the exceptions. Both were xenobiologists and were friends for some time already. That's why when their new pet fell asleep on Zoe's lap, Zia just moved higher, pretending to be Zoe's fancy scarf. At some moment, Ulgris suddenly remembered a question he was meaning to ask before. "Nick, what is an intern?" "It's a dumbass who gets thrown between the different jobs so that GA's xenobiologists could observe average human performance in different settings. Half of the jobs he thinks he's doing on the ship are actually puzzles or tests made by xenobiologists." For a second Nick laughed, thinking it was a joke. Suddenly, shock and realization showed on his face. His head snapped towards Zia. "Was that what these assignments were? You gave me these goddamn unsolvable puzzles to see how I will react. I was a lab rat all along." Zia hissed. "You didn't answer. You literally telepathed the word hiss." Everyone burst into laughter. But the laughter ended as abruptly as it started when they heard a feline cry, immediately followed by what seemed to be flesh exploding. When they went to investigate, they found half of a carcass that belonged to the same species as cats that previously occupied this cave. From the looks of it, this one was even bigger than those they saw before. The other half of the body was smeared on the ceiling and walls of the entrance. Lieutenant Davis turned to the fresh military intern. "What the fuck, Nick? I booby-trapped the entrance as you asked." "With what? A mine? Do we even have those?" Nick, suddenly remembering something, turned his back to Davis and pointed to Ulgris while smiling smugly. "I'll have you know that I did, in fact, successfully kill a 3 meters predator with a transport board." Shocked, Ulgris only mustered to ask, "What?" "I turned off safety, flipped it over, set the preferred height for any unregistered species to 8 meters, and set it to activate on touch, and finally set default cargo weight to 1 ton. Everyone finally understood. When the feline stepped on it, the transport board immediately pushed it with the power needed to lift 1 ton to 8 meters in whatever the ascending speed of the transport board without the safety is. No wonder it went to the ceiling, and walls, and everywhere else." Zoe yelled while embracing her pet. What if Dragon wandered on it? Lieutenant Davis covered his face with palms and sighed. "Phi, Timnock, Ulgris were all speechless." Zia hissed. Author's name and link to original text is in the description.